What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and today I'm going to be taking a look at what we know so far about the upcoming 27th Overwatch Hero, to try and determine not only what role and abilities they'll have, but also how their addition to the hero roster could end up massively changing the game as a whole. After all, Jeff Kaplan himself stated that he thinks Hero 27 is both very needed and a meta changer. So without further ado, let's take a look at what exactly Jeff could be telling us when he says this. Now, first off, to give some context for those of you who might be out of the loop, this first quote from Jeff was made during the New Year's developer update video.
We are well along the path on Hero 27. We think the hero is going to be awesome. We think the hero is very needed.
At the time, this technically could mean a couple different things, but the meaning behind these words were seemingly made much clearer when Jeff stated this next bit in an interview during the inaugural week of Overwatch League.
It's progressing awesome, and team's actually working overtime on the hero right now, and they're working really hard, but I think everybody's going to be really excited. I think it will be meta changing. I will go ahead and say that.
It should be noted that every hero edition will, on some level or another, change the meta. But when you take both these quotes together into consideration, as well as the fact that they were said by Jeff Kaplan, it seems like Hero 27 might change things a bit more than usual. So if it's going to be changing the meta, what exactly would that mean? Well, let's take a look at what the current Overwatch meta actually is. If we just take a quick look here at Overbuff and see who the top 6 most played heroes are at the highest level of competitive play, oh, would you look at that? That looks like a pretty well-formed dive comp team right there. So yes, without a doubt, dive comp is the current Overwatch meta. It's incredibly powerful and is frequently used at high levels of play. But furthermore, let's take a look at what actually counters dive comp. The key DPS components for any dive team are generally focused around heroes like Genji and Tracer, flankers with decent damage output who have extremely high mobility and very small hitboxes. So who's best equipped to actually take out these flankers? Well, the single biggest one that comes to mind is Winston. His jump pack and Tesla cannon makes him pretty ideal for hitting these small, quick targets. But as I'm sure you've already realized, Winston himself is a part of dive comp. If you want to look at the next best hero at countering these dive heroes, then you get D.Va, who is also a part of dive comp. And I think the issue is starting to become clear. The counter to dive comp is simply using dive comp. It counters itself, which means ultimately, people are always going to be using dive comp. Now, of course, this isn't technically true. If you've been watching the Overwatch League, then other strategies are put into play. But when it comes to dive comp, it's pretty powerful and doesn't really have any appropriate counters. So, if Hero 27 is very needed and is going to change the meta, it seems quite likely that it will counter dive comp without actually being a dive hero themselves. And so, if this is what they do, they'll most likely fit into either the defense or tank categories. So now that I've explained all the reasoning and gotten all that other boring stuff out of the way, let's get to the fun part where we actually start talking about what kind of abilities they might have. The first one that comes to mind is having some way for this hero to deliberately block off flankers from being able to get behind you and take out your squishy supports. How about an ability that produces some kind of wall or barrier to block off flanking routes? It could be similar to Mei's Ice Wall, except maybe a bit longer lasting, so it's something that you could kind of set up for the duration of a team fight to give you that security of knowing that your back is covered. Interestingly enough, there's actually a leak back in the day, way before even Doomfist came out, that talked about a hero named Bria, who seemingly had some kind of ability like this. Now, while this leak has pretty much been confirmed to be fake at this point, I do think it offers an interesting hero concept, where Bria would set up these apparently sort of pylons or something that would block off flanking routes, and then her ultimate would shoot electricity between them as a way to like zap people going through. As you can tell, it's not very fleshed out in terms of how it's described, but it seems like an interesting idea that maybe even though this leak is fake, we'll actually end up seeing at some point in the future, in one form or another. Now, moving on to a different kind of ability, another one that I've seen frequently talked about when it comes to countering dive and flankers is some kind of slowing mechanic. Again, referencing Mei, a great comparison would be her primary fire and ultimate. They gradually slow targets targets more and more until they ultimately end up freezing. Now, I can't imagine that this new hero would have a freezing mechanic per se as well, because that would be a literal copy of Mei, but perhaps they'd have some kind of AoE ability that would slow down targets in a set area, or even some other way of directly applying slow to an enemy. While I think this is a reasonable idea, it's not something that I'm particularly a fan of or think we're actually gonna see. The Overwatch devs have mentioned in the past that abilities that cause some sort of slowing or limitation to the enemy's ability to actually perform actions often result in simply being frustrating to play against. I'm sure you've all felt that for yourself when playing against a Mei or even a Symmetra and getting trapped by her turrets, which also slow you down. So not only would a slowing effect be overlapping with the abilities of Mei and Symmetra, but also they probably wouldn't be that much fun to deal with, just given how frustrating it already is dealing with the slowing abilities that already exist in game. So personally, I'm crossing that one off the list of possibilities, but I think it's worth talking about at the very least. So next up, how about some kind of area of effect damage application? Given how quickly dive heroes move and how hard it often is to hit them, having just an area of effect could make it a lot easier to apply damage to them without needing to necessarily have incredibly good accuracy. Winston's Tesla cannon already kinda does this, or you could even look at things like Mei's primary fire, which fires out a spray that you don't necessarily have to keep deadlocked onto your target in order to effectively damage, and in her case, slow them. One possibility that I personally would love to see in the game is some kind of flamethrower weapon. Mechanically, it would work a lot like Mei's primary fire, except instead of slowing and ultimately freezing the enemy, it might apply some sort of afterburn effect when it ignites them. Ignited enemies would then take small amounts of damage over time, either until a set period of time has passed where they automatically are extinguished, or maybe when they get healed in one way or another. I think the go-to comparison to make here would of course be the Pyro from TF2. If designed appropriately, I really think this afterburn effect could be beneficial to countering dive. Flankers and certain dive heroes would be especially susceptible to a flamethrower or some other sort of fire-based weapon that has this afterburn effect because of their small health pools. If you were to ignite a large tank such as Roadhog, the afterburn would only really take away a small portion of his health compared to how much he has in total. Whereas with someone like Tracer, who only has 150 health, maybe that would even be capable of killing her on its own. This is something that would likely have to be heavily balanced, because I could easily see it becoming overpowered or underpowered depending on how it works, but I really think it could be an effective way of countering dive. And on top of that, I just really want a flamethrower in Overwatch. I mean, come on, there are no fire-based weapons. Reinhardt has his Fire Strike, but that really doesn't count now, does it? In fact, sticking on the topic of fire-based abilities, what if the wall ability I first talked about was, instead of being some kind of physical barrier, was rather a fire barrier? It wouldn't provide any kind of physical obstruction for the flankers to get through it, however passing through its area would ignite them, thus causing damage over time and deterring them from wanting to take that route. Again, maybe it's just my own pyromania getting me excited about this kind of possibility, but I would love to see something like this put into the game, and I think it could be really beneficial. Now, I do also want to address something that I'm sure you've realized by this point, which is basically every single ability I've thought of has in some way been comparable to Mei. And it makes you wonder, is Mei the anti-flanking hero that we really need? Unfortunately, she's not very strong in the meta right now, which could be the only reason she isn't used to counter dive. Maybe a brand new hero isn't even really needed to fix this meta issue, and in actuality it would just require some sort of rework to Mei. You could even extend that to heroes like Symmetra and Torbjorn. Their turrets are pretty effective at taking out small mobile heroes, but overall they're just not good enough that they're ever actually in the meta at high levels of play. This is probably a topic best saved for a different video, because I think I could probably go way off track with it. But maybe certain hero reworks would be the most ideal solution to actually fixing the dive comp issue. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below what you think could be the role or abilities for Hero 27. Will they be a counter to dive comp? Or do you think Jeff meant something else by saying that they were going to be a needed meta changer? As always, be sure to hit that like button, and you can subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and turn on notifications to both help out my channel and keep up with all my future Overwatch content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.